I am gonna jump off the set for a few minutes and let Scott kind of walk you through this for a few more minutes. Let's try and get some outdoor looks coming up in the next few minutes as well. I've had this suit and tie on since about 2:30 this morning.
You're gonna go get some fresh stuff.
To get my street gear on before we make the big move, and so we'll be back full speed in just a little bit. But Scott, take it away for a few and just kind of keep us posted on that.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and take those graphics full screen right now. It'll be easy to drive around the situation here of what we are dealing with here. Approaching into the Wiregrass, we do have a major Category 4 storm on radar within the viewing area. The latest advisory from the Hurricane Center it's a little dated now. 150-mile-per-hour winds at the center, so it is starting to weaken a little bit. The pressure is starting to increase a little bit as well, but the forecast track does remain the same and still does call for us to have strong hurricane force winds, Category 2 winds, still as we do head into the 8 o'clock hour, and that wind field is going to extend out a little bit more than where this cone of uncertainty, the forecast cone, is for us, trekking through the extreme eastern part of the Wiregrass and the WDHN viewing area. So right now where the storm is, if you're in like Houston County into Blakely into Donaldsonville, if you're not in a safe location right now, you want to get there because this is coming in your direction. Just as Ben was talking about here at WDHN, our studios in Webb, we are in the preparation process of evacuating our facility because of the transmitter tower next to us. It's a tall tower, but it's not necessarily rated for wind speeds upwards of major hurricane force. So hour by hour, as we do head into the later afternoon, we're still going to be dealing with that center of circulation just to the east of the Wiregrass. We'll still be dealing with strong winds. Don't look at the exact plots on this map as far as the wind speeds, but just know that we will be looking at the likelihood of very strong winds in excess of 74, 75 miles per hour, still approaching Category 2 strength. And Matt, our director, Matt Ray, up in the booth, has just talked to me. Can you go ahead and repeat that? Okay, so we're going to be looking at that exiting, and back to what we were talking about as far as the exiting of Michael. It won't happen until the evening. Overnight, conditions are still going to be extremely windy for us, still in the tropical storm force range and gusting a little bit higher. We don't see real improvements in the forecast until we do go into the afternoon hours for Thursday and for Friday for what will be the cleanup days for this, if not extending beyond that with major hurricane force winds coming into the area. There's no doubt that it is going to take several days, if not weeks, to get things back to normal. Down at the coast, it's going to be months. And as far as that center of circulation right now, it is approaching Interstate 10 just to the south of Mariana itself. Here's Mariana, right here is Interstate 10. US 90 is with us right there, and this is going to be crossing over momentarily. The strongest winds likely right in this area where we have the highest reflectivity on our radar map, upwards of 150-mile-per-hour winds. We're going to put the velocity on here if we can get that to pop up. Sometimes with the internet being a little flaky like it is right now, we lose some of that data, and it looks like that's what we did. I was going to take a look at the speeds as far as what the radar is seeing. But right now, here's the path of that center line. If you're in between those arrows, Donaldsonville, pretty much all of Seminole County will be in the feeling the full blunt of this storm moving through. Same thing for Jackson County. Houston County, the southeastern part is going to get the strongest winds from this, likely still major hurricane status as it is approaching the area. Dothan just on the edge of that, but still a very powerful storm for the Circle City as it's moving through. Blakely, you're going to be in the same type of situation as Dothan, where just on the edge, if not right in the worst part of the storm as it is moving into the area. I want to give you a wider view at what is going on across the area for us. Here we go. There's the radar imagery of the whole storm. It is a large storm. It's about 160 miles across for that main core of the storm. 150 is what we're measuring at the moment, and all of that area, you have at least have to expect for there to be tropical storm force wind moving into the area. On satellite, this storm is still looking pretty impressive, and part of the reason why I think the storm is able to stay fairly strong even though it is over land. Notice over the past few frames that eye is getting a little bit smaller. When the eyes of hurricanes tend to get a little bit smaller, they actually tend to speed up a little bit. I remember a number of years back, the Hurricane Charlie that made landfall on the west coast of Florida. It was a Category 2 storm, but right as it was approaching the coastline, the eye wall contracted where all of a sudden it was half the size of what it was before, and it sped up, or the wind sped up, and all of a sudden we were dealing with a Category 4 storm making landfall in the Florida coastline. That's a similar process to what's going on here and why it's maintaining its strength. Usually things do tend to die off or start to die off a little bit as they do head inland, simply because with a hurricane, it's a heat engine. An engine needs to have a fuel source. The fuel source for a hurricane is the warm water, in this case, the Gulf of Mexico. And once it's over land, it gets cut off from that, and it's basically starved of fuel, starved of oxygen. So it is going to weaken right now. It's just a matter of how quickly is it going to weaken. The way it's looking at the moment, not quickly enough to spare us from having extensive damage for large portions of the Wiregrass, Jackson, Houston counties, and to our Georgia counties. We'll really be feeling the blunt of that in our area, and its extreme southeastern parts of Washington County also getting in on that action as well. So as far as the extreme wind warnings, we've been talking about that. The Weather Service in Tallahassee has not issued one of these in a very long time. They've canceled it out for the immediate coastline, but Jackson County, all of Jackson County, parts of Washington County, the southern part of Early County and into, Seminole County and into Decatur County are included in the extreme wind warning. The extreme wind warnings are issued when there are winds in excess of 115 miles per hour expected, and that's more or less, give or take a few miles per hour, the threshold of having a hurricane versus a major hurricane. Once you cross over into that major hurricane status, that is when we do have that that likelihood of very extensive catastrophic damage for us anywhere they are making landfall, and that's what we are dealing with down at the coast and even in parts of the Wiregrass. Yeah, it is possible that things are going to look extremely different from where they look right now as far as the scenery, as far as what structures are where, what the landscape looks like, the trees. Very different scene. This is going to be a very, very impactful storm for us. As far as the wind speeds and direction starting to pick up, we're losing some of the data for us down along the coast. We're losing internet connection as power outages occur, and as that storm is coming in, blowing down the infrastructure, we're going to lose that information. So bottom line, as far as what we are projecting, where we do have those purple shadings, that's where we do have the strongest winds right now. And right in the viewing area itself, we have sustained winds, 35 miles per hour at the Dothan Regional Airport. That doesn't factor in the gusts. We've seen gusts upwards of 50 miles per hour. Here's the current reading, 51 miles per hour for the wind gusts at the Dothan Regional Airport. Bainbridge, 53 miles per hour, and likely Mariana is dealing with extremely high winds at the moment. They are feeling the full force of this storm with those winds in excess of 140 to 150 miles per hour. So if you're watching us, if you can hear me and you are in any of those locations, certainly stay in your safe place. Get there, stay there until this storm does pass for us. And that will not be until we head into the later evening and overnight hours when we will finally start to see those winds subside a bit. Take a step-by-step view of what we can expect. Don't focus on the exact wind speeds. This is just a model projection of what this one particular model is showing us. Yeah, it's still showing us pretty high wind speeds as we do head into the evening hours, settling down a little bit with that center of circulation by, say, 9:45, 10 o'clock, heading toward the Albany, Georgia area, but that's after passing through our coverage area into the Wiregrass. Here we go into Blakely as we head into the 6 o'clock hour. And that's when here in Dothan we'll start to see those wind speeds decrease a bit for us, and that will continue as we do head into the evening hours, and certainly overnight. That's when conditions will be improving across the area for the entire Wiregrass and waking up things tomorrow morning. Just giving an update, parts of our crew are heading to the emergency management building in Dothan. Ben Stanfield just stepping out, so we'll be with you throughout the duration of this as long as possible. Part of the reason for why we are looking at exiting the building, we hate that we have to do it, but it's a matter of safety for the employees here, the equipment and everything else, because we have about a 99 foot, about 900 foot tower and some change thing next to the building with our antennas on it. This is a major hurricane coming through. They're not necessarily designed for this type of wind that is about to come into the area and gusting even higher than the sustained winds that we do have at the moment. If you're familiar with the transmitter towers, they're basically a lattice structure made out of steel and has all kinds of wires, copper piping and everything, and there's just 6 or 7 cables on each side of it that essentially holds it in place, and each side, it's on 3 sides with the tower being held in place. So not much to it, actually. So when you have winds like this, it's always safer to err on the side of caution. Going back to action radar now, we're just going to take a closer look at what is going on. Looks like that center of circulation right now is making its way over Interstate 10 now, likely seeing those winds that are in excess of 150 miles per hour, also moving into Mariana, Chattahoochee, feeling that as well. Bluntstown starting to settle down a little bit. Looks like Youngstown was pretty much in the full force of the storm, you're still dealing with a lot of rain down there, but our focus is right now where this is going. Unfortunately, things are going to be very different down there. Donaldsonville is pretty much the bullseye in our area to have the center of circulation moving over your neighborhood as we do head into the next couple of hours. I'm going to give a closer view here. Steam Mill, Malone, Donaldsonville, Gordon all have the chance of having those strongest winds passing through the area. As far as wind speeds, we've seen a lot of reports pouring in of wind gusts upwards of 130 miles per hour and greater. So cementing that this is in fact a major hurricane coming through the area. We saw a lot of video with structures not holding up so well at Panama City. We saw some on via social media of some structures that were probably more of a wood frame variety, smaller, like bungalow style houses that were pretty much decimated by the storm, not only from the wind but down by the coast, the extreme storm surge that we have been watching as the storm has been coming on shore. We've seen reports of those storm surge amounts upwards of 15 feet for some spots. We'll start to see that water begin to recede as the storm does exit. The stronger winds will be more of a northerly to westerly direction as the storm does exit, but either way, this is a pretty rough situation that we are dealing with here in the Wiregrass. We have not seen a storm of this magnitude cross over the area since 1995 when Hurricane Opal made landfall in the western panhandle as a Category 3 storm. I believe it was a little bit stronger when it was offshore, but it did make landfall as a Category 3 storm in 1995. It did cross over Dothan, caused some havoc, some damage, power outages that did last for quite some time for what I understand. I didn't live in the area, but many of the people that I do know around here who I work with, Ben Stanfield, Janie Hinson, they all talk about that. That's probably the most memorable storm that they've dealt with. This is probably now going to be the most memorable storm because we've been able to get so many pictures coming into the studios here from people snapping pictures before they go to their safe place, videos coming in from the coastline. Unfortunately, I can't show much of that to you right now other than the radar because, well, we're exiting the building. Oscar Fan, trusted meteorologist, is in the studio with me right now watching things unfold here. And you know, we don't have a mic on you, but you've seen some pretty good pretty interesting stuff around the region. And Matt, if you're up there, if we can punch up microphone, which one do you have, Oscar? He's on mic 3. If you can quickly punch that up, Oscar, you've seen pretty much everything in the last, say, 20 years across the area here. What'd you say, Matt? Oh, okay, I'll get that.
Got to turn it on.
Yeah, apparently that just one of those little steps that we have to take care of. Everything around here takes power.
Yeah, I'm used to people doing that part
Yeah.
for me, so I didn't do it.
Yeah, sorry, I'll remember that next time. But either way, you know, you've been around for a lot of things, and you've never seen anything like this magnitude come in our area.
No, it's really interesting. The infrared of the Michael in the last 2 or 3 hours as it was moving in seemed to kind of constrict, compact, and maybe that helped increase its intensity, but it didn't look as healthy as it had been out in the northern Gulf.
Right, yeah, it was really looking like a really classic looking buzzsaw kind of textbook
it's really
storm.
kind of tight, and it's fortunately for PC, it came in about 10 miles southeast down at Mexico Beach. Getting a little thunder or
that is the wind we are hearing going through
Richmond?
the guy wires and also passing over this roof. Our roof isn't the best engineered thing, from what I understand.
No, quite often at TV stations it's basically a I don't know how to describe it, but basically it's a kind of a
well, I worked for a station in Tupelo, Mississippi for a while. We called it the Shed. The studio was essentially
I was at a station.
A steel building. You didn't want to be there.
I was at a station that the newsroom was an add-on feature, and it was really just a corrugated tin roof.
Yeah.
And the studio was on the other side of the building, but the newsroom was really not exactly something that inspired confidence at that place. But that's how it goes. But now I haven't seen gusts like this. Of course, at least up to 50, maybe 55. I left my house a couple hours ago and still had power, but I had some limbs down, but they were dead limbs. And I've always made the joke that high winds are nature's way of pruning.
Yeah.
And if you haven't had a windstorm in a while, then like we haven't, then here comes all the dead limbs that haven't been coming down yet. So it's going to be a major undertaking, but maybe with a little luck we'll just have scattered outages, but I think probably it's going to be more widespread as we go through the afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just going to get worse for us.
It's interesting on the radar. If you see, like behind me, that's infrared. But look at the radar, and you can see the trailing edge of the steady rain has entered western Okaloosa County. So that inspires confidence for those people that in Walton County, say around Santa Rosa Beach, and then back in Okaloosa County around Destin, Fort Walton Beach, that things will be improving shortly there. And even look at Panama City. It looks like they are about to exit the steady rainfall.
Yeah.
So, and,
and with that steadier rainfall, they're going to see their wind speeds decrease dramatically for them.
And until what's Michael, I don't know what the winds are now with Michael, but until it gets at least a little bit north of east of us, once it does get up in that general direction, then we will see a slow decrease in our winds. But until it gets east and maybe a little north of east and starts actually pulling away from us, we will have some issues.
Absolutely, and that's something that we're not looking forward to, the issues
No.
afterwards.
Stay safe. Wherever you are,
absolutely.
don't move out, and
Yeah.
just hunker down, as they say.
Yeah, especially if you're if you're watching us and you still have power, you still have the ability to watch us. If you're in like central Jackson County, stay in that safe place right now. Stay away from those windows and doors, because we are seeing the worst of the storm over you right now. The eye is pretty much entirely in Jackson County, just to the south of Interstate 10 and the highway that goes through Marietta there. I'm blanking on it. 98, right, Oscar?
90.
That's right.
Yeah. And but yeah, you can see that little green whitish, that's the eye. And so again, don't be fooled, because you will have a few minutes of kind of calm conditions before it picks back up again.
But then on that backside, like where Bluntstown is, they're seeing those winds pick up again, and eventually now it will start to settle down. Youngstown starting to see the highest winds exit, but still dealing with the intense rainfall moving into the area. But right now, Marietta is under the gun for this Chattahoochee. He's dealing with that as well.
It's right at 3 o'clock now. I think probably maybe as early as 4:30, but definitely by 5 you should see increasing, let's have the word for it. You should see decreasing winds, but improving conditions here in Dothan.
Yeah.
So, but just hang in there for another hour and a half or 2 hours if you're in Dothan.
Yeah, and in that time, probably we'll all be I'll be out of the WDHN World Headquarters, as we like to refer to it as, since conditions here are going to be pretty rough. We're located in Webb, which is on the east side of 52, a few miles outside of the Dothan proper city limits. Well, actually, the city limits are on the edge of our property, but either way, the main core of the city is a few miles away, and we're located in Webb, so that puts us a little bit closer to those stronger winds compared to, I mean, a few miles in a situation does make all the difference between having extremely strong winds to maybe something a little bit weaker that maybe won't produce as much damage. So that's why the western wiregrass is probably in a better situation right now than they could be otherwise.
And I was kind of involved in a couple of things over there, but people are aware that Ben and most of the crew are headed to the EMA in downtown Dothan to set broadcasting up down there because they're worried about the really tall tower out here succumbing to the winds later this afternoon.
Yeah, it's built to withstand wind, obviously. It's been standing since 1970, so it's not a weak structure. But when you're dealing with a storm like this, where it's hurricane force for upwards of, say, several hours, 3-4 hours, it's gonna put a lot of stress on the building. There's a lot of tension on those cables. I've seen things when those towers are coming down, they can basically slice right through a car.
Yeah, and what happens is sometimes you'll get some wind that will kind of torque the tower a little bit, which is no big deal. But then it's in a kind of a slightly off kilter position, then another wind will come from a slightly different direction, and all of a sudden put a kind of a finishing blow on it. And then once you start to pop a wire,
you're done.
Then you start to lose that stability, and then the other wires get under more stress than they were designed for, and then here we go.
Yeah, and that's what we are dealing with. It's something that we did think about a few days out. We're like looking up, it's like, yeah, look at it. Yeah, there's a tower there. Yeah, and then here we are. You know, but certainly almost a worst case scenario for the area as far as now Dothan, since we're not going to be seeing the eye pass over. It's not maybe as bad as like what Mariana's dealing with, but still nothing like we've seen before.
It's going to be interesting to see exactly what the maximum winds were recorded from land stations down along the coast, and to see how they actually, you know, quite often you never quite reach the actual recorded winds that the satellites as well as the hurricane hunters have pretty much extrapolated from the storm. And so it will be interesting to see that. I'll be interested to see some of those cranes down there, the construction cranes, if they fared well. You know, but making landfall about 10 miles southeast of Panama City, it doesn't sound like much, but that 10 miles could have really spared PC from really the highest winds, and they may have caught a big break with that. Mexico Beach, not so, but Panama City might have caught a little break here. Yeah,
so little bit of good news for them at this point, and that was
that sounds like about almost a 60-mile-an-hour gust.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're starting to get close. Actually, we can let's take a look at that right now. Let's pull the maps up full screen if we can. Take a look at the wind gusts. There's the closer look at the radar with the storm heading towards Mariana. There we go at the airport, 51 miles per hour, and that's a little bit north of our location. So likely here we're going to be feeling those winds a little bit sooner. So more than likely it could be a 60, getting close to hurricane force gusts here.
Okay, the question I have looking at that, I don't see any winds further south. Is that because they're not reporting, or we don't have them on that?
I think that's probably a data issue at this point, because they've been dropping off as like Panama City points northward. We were looking at the coastal communities, and I don't think there's anything really showing up now as far as that data coming out. Yeah, all of our stations right along the coast are blank.
That tells you something.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when Andrew was making landfall. I remember stories about that because, you know, obviously you remember Andrew made landfall when they were talking about a Category 4 storm. After reanalyzing the data several years later, realized that, yeah, it was a Category 5 storm.
Yeah, it took about
15
years to do that. It was funny, also not funny, but it was interesting because at the time, Hurricane Center was in Coral Gables, Florida, home of University of Miami. And while they were watching the storm as it was approaching, they heard this loud thump in the building, and it turned out it was the wind blowing the Doppler radar off the top of the building.
Yeah, those are pretty much like a sail.
Yeah, and it's probably good that when you have the Doppler radar about 20, 30 miles away from your location, because then you're not blind at your location. But like you say, in case it tumbles,
Yeah.
You know, maybe it tumbles into some farmer's field, but not into
not into structures and
yeah.
everything. In addition to the strong winds, heavy rain, it looks like we do have a flash flood warning in place. Yeah, for all the counties highlighted in green until 9:45 tonight. So not that you're going to be doing any kind of driving with tropical storm and hurricane force winds in that area, but we could see some of the small rivers and streams maybe rise a little bit. I don't think there's a huge concern overall with the rivers since it's been a little bit dry. Things have been behaving
plus
a
it's
bit.
moving pretty fast.
And it's moving pretty fast, so we won't be dealing with like several feet of rain localized.
Being in my house
maybe.
about a couple hours ago, I estimate probably have had about 2.5 inches of rain there. And so hopefully we'll see that diminish for us and about the same time the winds start to diminish. But that's at least about 2.5 hours away.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's what our one of our models is projecting: the brighter colors. That's where we expect there to be more rain over the next 2 days, essentially. Now, down at the coast, that drops off a bit because the rain already fell. This is going into the future for what we were seeing. So,
and as noticed a couple hours ago, Dothan was around 4.5 inches.
Yeah, now looking at maybe a little bit more for us.
And that's the forecast. That's from now into the future.
Yeah, so for the next 2 days, don't set these in stone. We could see in between there more rain. We could see a little bit less rain, but nonetheless, we're getting rain with this.
Just be glad this thing's moving in a nice clip.
It is, and it will likely pick up steam as it does continue to move to the northeast. There's a cold front that. Like I guess on Sunday and into Monday, it was more or less in the midsection of the country. And that's coming in our direction. That's good. That trough of low pressure, it's going to sort of open the door for this storm to quickly move up to the northeast. And we were just talking about the winds decreasing a little bit. Update from the Hurricane Center, now down to 140 miles per hour. So we're still at a Category 4 strength, but pretty shortly it will be weakening to Category 3, which still is going to be a very strong wind for us moving in. And this is indicating that the actual center is 10 miles south of Mariana. Well, as we can see, that's probably about right with where the radar is plotting it at the moment. So it is on track to, as far as the timing, on track for what we have been saying over the past several days. But the forward speed has picked up a little bit, northeasterly at 15 miles per hour, probably the next advisory, which will be out within the next half an hour or so, give or take. When situations like this, they tend to either sometimes like when it's offshore, I've noticed that they tend to really cross their T's and dot their I's, and the advisories are coming out like right at like say 5 o'clock Eastern time or 8 o'clock Eastern time. But with this, sometimes we get that data
and
a little bit faster.
We're looking for, it hasn't quite happened yet, but that northeast direction, we're looking for it to kind of turn to more of a northeast direction, at least kind of like if you want to split hairs, instead of northeast, maybe kind of a northeast is, I can't even think about it in the cardinal thing. Say northeast is 45 degrees, so northeast is about 30 degrees. So maybe get to about a 35 or 40 degree bearing, which would move it away a little bit faster.
Yeah, and really help to pull those strongest winds out of the region.
According to that little graphic, it looks like it is down to a 2, which would be below 130. No, yeah, right, 100, no, 110.
Yeah, 100
when it's east of us.
Yeah, exactly. So either way, I mean, it's still going to be a strong storm, but I mean, that little bit of weakening could be the difference from having widespread catastrophic damage to maybe isolated major damage and maybe some minor damage. But if you're in the path of the storm, anywhere in that forecast cone, at least while this is hurricane force, between now and as we do head into the early or later overnight hours rather, we'll be looking at the possibility of those strongest winds and the greatest damage from this storm across the Wiregrass.
Another thing of interest to local people is the farming situation. Cotton and peanuts are being harvested about now, peanuts anyway, and so this could throw a problem into it if you've got a lot of rain in the fields. You don't want several inches of rain in the fall when you're doing this. I think the peanut crop may be a little bit further along. The cotton crop usually comes later, but still that could put a dent into what some of the farmers are wanting.
And also with a crop like that, peanuts are underground.
Right.
Cotton's above ground. With winds like this, that could just
but at the same time, cotton's close to the ground.
That's
it's not
true.
like corn. Can get knocked down. But and I've been told by farmers that the peanuts in the ground and the fields get flooded or wet, leave them alone and let the fields dry, and don't try to pull the peanuts in a drastic fashion, because that actually can worsen the situation. So
it's interesting.
But yeah, but hopefully it won't be too much of a blow to the two crops.
Yeah, so we'll be watching that carefully. I'm sure all the agriculture community is watching that very closely as well, watching the storm as closely as we are as well. It's 3:11 past the hour. Just want to make sure that we're letting you know this is WDHN TV 18 Dothan, Alabama. We are covering Major Hurricane Michael. Right now, I'm Chief Meteorologist Scott Roberts, joined by meteorologist Oscar Fan, legend in the meteorology community
just retired,
around here. Well. You're a very well-known and trusted figure here in the market.
I think any meteorologist, once they get out away from it or retire, you keep up with it on your own, because you do have people, your friends, keep asking you about things and all that stuff.
It's a good day to go this or that or whatever else.
But it's yeah, you saw how strong it was in the Gulf, but you keep thinking, you know, maybe it would just get to a minimum 4, and then it kept increasing in intensity and all that. But again, maybe because of the landfall at Mexico Beach, PC caught a break. We'll see over the next day or two
as far as the
survey the damage.
Exactly. And
but I think it was okay for Walton County, the Destin, Santa Rosa Beach, places like that over there, Seaside should have been okay. But
yeah, we did have some pictures coming out there. Surf was a little rough, but since the wind's offshore, obviously, not dealing with that storm surge, but somewhat breezy. Certainly not a
big
beach
difference
day.
when
Still
you don't have
rip
the whole.
currents
And another thing
else.
we're worried about too, if this had been in this intensity and made landfall, say around Apalachicola, the Appalachia Bay area, all that water. Okay. All right. I was hoping we could keep going to Ben and then go.
Stepping in,
No, it's been a
appreciate
pleasure.
it.